This is the Fujinon A19x8.7 BRM-28AT2. If you haven't seen the last video, this lens feels like a direct competitor to the Canon YJ19x9. They're both similarly spec'd, with a 19 by zoom range and very close to 9mm on the wide end. They're both affordable budget version lenses, and they both don't have a doubler but have very similar features otherwise. They both have more affordable build qualities than a J series or a broadcast series lens would. So these are more aimed at professional video, corporate video, that sort of thing. This is a Fujinon A series lens, and the A in the model code designates that it is a standard definition lens. This one has a particularly nice macro switch. Although it is plastic, it feels a bit better than the YJ macro switch. And the back focus knob here is in a slightly better position for adjusting. All the control rings feel ever so slightly higher quality than the YJ lens. This lens has a maximum 1.8 aperture. It's also got a zoom demand port there for a standard zoom demand control. Note that the zoom demand that you require is a Fujinon one or a switchable one. Canon specific zoom demands will not work with Fujinon lenses and vice versa, so you either need a brand agnostic one with a switch or you need a Fujinon zoom demand. Here we have the rear element of the lens and rear mount. This lens is a 2/3 inch b4 lens, so it will work with 2/3 inch b4 cameras, or it'll be very suitable for using on Super 16 size sensors with an optical correcting adapter. So this is the lens overall. It's very compact for a nearly 20 times zoom, and if you're after a smaller setup on a Super 16 or equivalent size sensor, this might be a very good option if you don't need those fast snappy zooms that a proper broadcast servo will allow. If you're just doing slower zooms or medium speed zooms, then this type of lens would be perfectly suitable. This lens also has slightly lower image quality than a comparable broadcast lens from the same era. But that's understandable given these are quite a bit cheaper than the broadcast versions. It performs quite similarly to the Canon YJ19x9. So if you haven't seen that video, I definitely recommend you go and watch that video to see whether that one or this one is more to your liking if you're after a cheap one. Now we'll move into the test footage I captured with this lens. This footage was captured on a Sony FS7 Mark I using an optically corrected adapter. You can pause here to see all the settings that I used. And just to note, most of this footage in this section was shot at f4 to f8. That's because it was a particularly contrasty situation with the sky behind a lot of it. Which caused a lot of chromatic aberration under f4. And you can see we're getting nice detail here compared to on the right, which is wide open. You can see there's a lot more softness wide open, which is typical of these older video class SD lenses. And then at f5.6 we get nice detail, still a little bit of chromatic aberration in f5.6, but nowhere near as pronounced as wide open you can see very clear green and purple fringing on the wide open version. Even on a gloomy, cloudy day, there is plenty of detail. You can see there's significantly less chromatic aberration when the background is not so high contrast. So keep that in mind if you are going to be shooting high contrast things. This may not be the lens that's suitable, but if you're going to be shooting in controlled lighting situations, or particularly in lighting situations where you can utilize darker backgrounds and slightly lower contrast and lower light pinging the lens, then this might be a suitable lens. When stopped down, it still does quite well for such an old SD lens, and we can still get plenty of detail. Pause on this screen and you can read the settings that I used. In this next section I've captured some extra footage in some backlit, close-up and macro shooting situations. So considering the backlit situation and the light pinging the lens, the budget Fujinon A series lens is performing quite well. There's a few specks of dust on the front element which are causing some of those spots. Now we move around to the front lit side of the flowers and bees to show the image quality in a different lighting situation. In controlled shooting situations where you can stop down to f4, you can get some really nice image quality out of the lens despite it being quite a cheaper lens. It's by no means a cheap lens. When it was new, it was probably several $1,000s. But it is cheap relative to broadcast lenses. The main thing to take away from all this test footage is that if you're shooting controlled lighting situations where you have control over the iris and you don't have to open up the iris to wide open for exposure, then these more affordable B4 lenses can perform quite well. Really, their only downsides are that their zoom speed, their maximum zoom speed, is much slower than a broadcast lens, and that they're not as sharp or detailed and have more chromatic aberration wide open. And if that's your shooting situation, then this might be a good match at an affordable price. Now we move on to the zoom speed test. We're comparing the Fujinon A19x8.7 against the previously tested Canon YJ19x9. Since they're a similar zoom range and similarly affordable old SD lenses, it will be interesting to see which one has the fastest maximum zoom speed. And the Canon YJ19x9 has a faster zoom speed. So if you're in the market for a budget B4 zoom lens and need a slightly faster zoom, obviously choose the Canon YJ19 over this Fujinon A19. There isn't too much in it, and if you're manually zooming and snap zooming that way, it's a non-issue. The Fujinon has a very nice granular zoom speed, so you can really do slow zooms and medium zooms and everything in between. It's very fine and granular. There's no stepping in the zoom speed. Thanks for watching the whole video through. We have now finished our look at the two budget options in B4 lenses, and the following videos from this one will be looking at much higher quality B4 lenses, so keep an eye out for those.